Hi everyone, my name is Ethan. I am discussing the debate topic of whether or not a border wall is positive or negative for national security. I'm taking the position that it has more negatives than positives, and that there's a myriad of alternative solutions that combined together can produce a similar result as a border wall without all of the baggage. So the first thing I wanted to discuss was how building a border wall would be disruptive to the American food supply chain. So currently, about 1.6 to 2 million. There are 1.6 to 2 million agricultural workers in the United States, and of those, about 50 to 70% are illegal immigrants, and another 10 to 15% of those are people with H-2A visas. And so building a border wall without expanding the H-2A visa program would be quite disruptive to our food supply chain, because the agricultural industry would suddenly lose a significant amount of their supply of labor. And the reason why this is this compounds is, you would think, well, American citizens would take those jobs, is that it's been notoriously difficult to get American citizens to hold on to these jobs for any significant period of time. So I think it would be a far better solution than a border wall, which would be quite disruptive, and both in the short and long term, to instead expand the H-2A visa system to make it to where more of these people who are coming here to work on our work in farms and food production would be, if you give them H-2A visas and they're legal, they have documentation, and it's safer for them to come here. They don't have to try to go over through the desert and pay thousands of dollars to be smuggled over. And then at the same time, they feel safer and more willing to report crimes to the police, as they don't feel that they're at risk because of their immigration status. So you would reduce the amount of illegal immigrants, illegal immigration, people here without documentation, while still preserving the food supply chain. Second, in terms of narratives in national security, like what we discussed with Greece and Macedonia with the naming of the statues, it's important national security to think about what the message of certain moves sends. And I think building a border wall, and sorry about the camera glitch, building a border wall is symbolic. It sends a message that is kind of contrary, in my view, to the one we usually try to send to the world of the United States as a free and open society, a city on a hill where all of the the peoples of the world, if they want opportunity, if they want rights, they can come here to the United States and get them. And I think that building a border wall runs contrary to that image. And I think you can reduce illegal immigration through other means. And some of those other means is, you could, for example, I think one of the best solutions might be is to beef up and expand E-Verify. E-Verify is a system by which employers can verify the immigration, the documentation status of their workers, to make sure that they're legal workers, that they're legally allowed to work in the United States. So if you expand E-Verify, make it federally mandated, and increase the penalties for employers who do not use it, you'll make it harder for legal immigrants to find work in the United States, incentivizing them to get legal immigration status. At the same time, if you want to, you also have to make it easier for those people, now that they can't work because of E-Verify, because of their documentation status, to make it easier to come here legally. That's part of the thing. And so that would, again, reduce the number of people without documentation, while still making sure that these employers can find the workers they need. Now, also, another thing that we can do is that we can beef up the security at our existing ports of entry to stop most of the drugs go through these ports of entry. And if you beef those up, you make it to where they would have to go through the desert, which would make it's much more difficult, because of just natural land formations, makes it a lot more difficult to travel through the desert, travel through these rivers and mountains that block people from coming over. So you would make it much harder for them to traffic drugs into the United States. And at the same time, with that, you probably have to make it to where you expand the number of Border Patrol agents who are patrolling these areas, without, again, having to build a border wall. And both of these solutions will kind of keep that image, keep the narrative of the United States as a free and open society, kind of not have the negative kind of connotations of a wall has for that image, while still achieving a similar result. And I think finally the last point I kind of have is that building a border wall ignores the underlying reasons why illegal immigration is so prevalent in the United States, which, it's incredibly difficult to legally immigrating into the United States unless you're from certain countries, unless you're a highly skilled, highly sought after migrant. Those people can more easily immigrate, but there's very long waiting times for people who are low skilled immigrants. And unfortunately, a lot of those are coming from Latin America and Central America. So I think what one of our priorities should be, rather than building a border wall, we should be looking at how can we make it to where these countries are more economically and politically and socially stable so that their populations have less of a reason to come to the United States. And so I think, for most of us, I think we would all agree if we don't necessarily want to leave the United States because we have economic opportunity, we have access to education, we're at ASU, we have access to the things that can make our lives better. And for a lot of these people in these countries, they feel desperate, they don't have access to those things, and they feel threatened by crime and political instability. And so I think if you focus on, say, like investing more in foreign aid, investing in the Peace Corps, building up these countries' governments, trying not to kind of play games and trying to make sure, this government, we don't like them because they're ideologically aligned against us, like the one in Bolivia was and the one in Honduras. Instead, we make sure that even if we have ideological disagreements with these countries, we make sure that they stay stable and democratic, and so that these populations can kind of stay in their countries, and also at the same time, I think, move away from the Washington Consensus on regional economic policy, allow Latin American and Central American countries to build up their industry, build up their economies without the threat of American manufacturing and trade basically wiping them out. Make it to where, again, their populations have access to economic opportunity, have industries they can work in so they have less of a reason to migrate here in the United States. Thank you for watching.